Now let's move on to this particular question. Faulty goods costing $210 were returned by Henry to the supplier. Henry recorded this as $120 in the general ledger accounts. State the accounting entries required for Henry to correct the error. Okay, so faulty goods costing $210 were returned by Henry to the supplier. However, Henry recorded this particular return as $120 instead of $210. So what should have been the correct entry? When faulty goods costing $210 are returned to the supplier, the original entry should have been the supplier account or the accounts payable account should have been debited by $210, so that this will reduce the amount owed to the supplier, and it has to be credited to the purchaser's return account by $210. So as a result of that, this will reduce the purchases due to the return. However, what Henry has done, he has recorded instead of 210, he has recorded it as $120. So therefore, Henry incorrectly recorded the return as $120 instead of $210, resulting in a shortfall of $90 in both the supplier account as well as the purchaser's return account. So to correct this error, what we need to do is we need to adjust the difference between the actual cost of the faulty goods, which is $210, and the recorded amount of $120, which is $90. So the correcting entries will be, you need to debit the supplier account or the accounts payable account $90. So this increases the reduction in the amount owed to the supplier to the correct value of $210. Then you need to credit the purchaser's return account by $90. This increases the purchase returns to reflect the full amount of the goods returned. So therefore, the supplier account was under debited by $90, so it needs an additional debit, and also the purchase return account was under credited by $90, so it needs an additional credit. So therefore, the correct entry will be to debit the accounts payable account by $90 and to credit the purchaser's return account by $90. Now let's move on to this particular question. Taylor's draft accounts for the year ended 31st July 2018 had a profit of $36,834. On investigation, Taylor discovered the following. A contra for $1,125 between the receivables and payables general ledger accounts had not been recorded. A contra for $1,125 between receivable and payables had not been recorded. The fixtures and fittings depreciation charge amounting to $870 had not yet been accounted for. Okay, so these two entries have not been accounted. So this balance is prior to these adjustments. Okay, so what was the adjusted profit for the period? Now to calculate the Taylor's adjusted profit, what we need to do is we need to analyze the adjustments required based on the given information. First of all, let's look at the contra between receivables and payables. What is the impact on the profit? A contra entry involves offsetting the receivables and payables with the same amount. Okay, so when you have a receivable account, it's usually a debit balance, and accounts payable is a credit balance. So when you offset, what you need to do is you need to credit the accounts receivable, this is accounts payable, you need to credit the accounts receivable, and you need to debit the accounts payable. So you debit accounts receivable and you credit accounts receivable and you debit accounts payable, so that you can offset receivable versus payables. But what is the effect on profitability? None. A contra entry does not affect the profit because it does not involve income or expenses. So these are simply assets and liabilities. Okay, so we are offsetting assets against liabilities, therefore it's a balance sheet impact. There is no impact on the profitability. Then the second one, depreciation on fixtures and fittings. What is the impact? Depreciation is an expense, so that reduces the profit. So therefore the depreciation amount, the charge for the period is $870 had not been recorded. So this is the $870. So what is the effect on profitability? So profit decreases by $870. So this is an expense. So therefore your profit is given. So therefore your profit is given as $36,834 before adjusting for the depreciation on fixtures and fittings. So therefore once you make an adjustment to this, the adjusted profit will reduce by $870. So therefore your adjusted profit will be $35,964. So this is the answer for this particular question.